When I went to auctioneering school, I didn't even have a clue there was such a thing. But back in 2014, I went to auctioneering school, went through that process, became licensed through the licensing board in Fuquay-Varina, and had no clue that what I do even existed, which is the benefit and charity gala side of the auction business. Big industry. Um, and so what I do is normally, just like this past Saturday night, I was involved in the Make-A-Wish Foundation of Eastern North Carolina. It was in Raleigh at Northridge Country Club. And it was their biggest fundraiser of the year. And about 300 guests, black tie deal, and we sold about 5 really nice live auction items and did a fund to wish, which is where you ask for monetary donations, working from a high level to a low level. And it's really it's a neat field. I befriended our champion of our Auctioneers Association back in 2015, and he introduced me to this business and told me a little bit about it. Went to our association convention, shook a couple of hands, and some of those gentlemen were kind enough to put me in the right track. And so there we go. That's where I've been from since 2014.
So I've heard you say that when you were younger, you used to do, I guess it was like the cow sales, right? Is that where you first saw an auctioneer?
Actually, I think me and Daddy went to a farm sale one day when I would say somewhere around kindergarten, first grade. And as you well know, my personality is a little bit on the OCD side and obsessive. And I remember going to that sale, and I heard the auctioneer, and I heard him rattling off his bid call. And I was like, I was intrigued, and it started a little bit of fire. And I always had wanted to know what that was all about. And when I would see one, maybe on RFD TV, as you know, we get down here, RFD TV runs the cow sales, and those auctioneers are just rattling it off. Those are some of the best cattle auctioneers in the world that get that gig. And I heard that, and but that's what started my want to be an auctioneer back when I was 5 years old. And I actually never did it until 2014. I wish I had done it a long time ago, but I love it. It's allowed me to meet some of the coolest people in the world, and I have seen just how there's some great people in this. There's a lot of great in this world going on right now as we speak, and I get to witness it a lot often, and I'm happy I do.
That's awesome. You talked about shaking hands and meeting people. So tell me, what role does relationships play in auctioneering? Not just in auctioneering, but I mean, all successful people that I know will tell you that it's all about relationships. It's about meeting people. It's about doing for others, that kind of thing. What role has that played for you in auctioneering?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm a first generation auctioneer. That means I'm the first member of my family that's ever been an auctioneer. If Daddy had been an auctioneer, I'd be a second generation auctioneer, of course. But with me being a first generation auctioneer, I learned at auctioneering school that I needed to join our association because I had no hookups whatsoever outside of me. You know what I didn't come home and there was Daddy said, "Okay, son, there's your seat. You're now sitting in this seat. This is your auction seat." So I joined our association, and I went, and I did not know one soul. And I will tell you this, as you just mentioned, Caegan, it's all about networking. I don't care what you're doing. It's all about networking. It's all about sticking your hand out and shaking hands. I befriended our champion in 2015. I befriended another guy. I befriended 3 people that completely kick-started my benefit auction career. And if I hadn't have joined the association, I'd be willing to bet you that my license would be lapsed right now and dead, and I probably would not be doing anything. But the fact that I was willing to go and shake hands and meet those gentlemen, and the fact that they were able to teach me what they know, just completely jump-started the whole thing. And without that networking, I would have never succeeded. So it was to my advantage to join and go be a part of it, for sure.
Yeah, definitely important in any area of life, but definitely in auctioneering. So what, in your opinion, do you think makes a great auctioneer? What are the tools that a great auctioneer has to, either possess or gain?
Well, number one, auctioneering is sort of you just don't see auctioneers that often. There's not that many of us. So
No.
you've got to obviously have you've got to have a drive. You got to have a drive. I would say you've got to have some God-given talent that's been put in your soul by God and only God. And number three, I would say that in order to be a successful auctioneer, you got to be honest. You got to be able to, you got to have high integrity. And that's, of course, doing the right thing when nobody's looking. You got to have high integrity, you got to be honest, and you got to have a passion, and you got to have a drive and be able to develop that bid call, which is what average person thinks of when they hear the word auctioneer. I tell people all the time, they say, what do you do? I say, I teach elementary PE and I'm an auctioneer. They say, well, let me hear you do that. So that is what 99 out of 100 people think of when they say, oh, he can talk fast. But there's so much more to it than that. But you got to be driven. You got to have a passion. You got to have an obsessive personality, just like mine, I'd say. And you got to be willing to, like we touched on already, you got to be willing to stick your hand out and meet people so they can and let them help you.
So what is it about auctioneering that appeals to you? What about you as a person connects with being an auctioneer? And even at a young age, when you first, were going to those livestock sales and you heard that auctioneer doing the, whatever, what about that was, you said that's cool. I could do that one day. What is it do you think that sticks out?
It's just part of that. It's just part of that personality of mine. Something in my mind just attracts to things that a lot of people aren't attracted to. Like I can ride a unicycle, which is an odd trait. I can ride a unicycle. Try to learn that. That's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing I ever learned to do in my life. I can ride a unicycle. I can, there's just, you got to be driven in and pulled in for some reason. And it's just so much to it. And there's so much practice that goes into that whole thing that you just got to be, and I like to talk to people. And so, a lot of these events I do, there'll be anywhere from 200 to 900 people there, and they are there for the right reasons. They're there to give. They're there to make a difference. And they get, everybody gets dressed up. They come in. There's cocktail hour. There's a silent auction. There's live auction. There's fund to need, which is when we ask for monetary donations, working for high to low, and just everybody is there with a light heart, and it's just a great event, and I just enjoy being a part of it. And I've met some of the greatest people through it. I met some famous people and a lot of sports people as well, and it's just a fun ride. I just enjoy it.
What was that process like for you when you first learned, to do the bid call and all that? When you were training yourself, what did that look like for you on a night at home when you were trying to, practice and everything?
Well, I would be inside that red barn that you know all about, where where you used to live, and then where I lived, beside where your daddy grew up. And I would go out in that barn. Mom and daddy bought me a PA system, a nice PA system. And I would go out in that barn and I would log hours when I was practicing. I would write down my filler words. I'd write down my filler phrases, and I would log those hours. And I wrote down on the top of that paper, I said, North Carolina state champion auctioneer. And I wrote down on top of that thing, and I'd log those hours. And I just practice and practice and practice. I practiced riding up down the road, but it was just years and years. And I still to this day do it. Cutting grass, I'm bid calling. Riding down the road, I'm bid calling. I just cannot get enough of it. I love it. It's been good to me, and I've enjoyed it. And it's just but it takes a lot of practice. A lot of practice. We'll be standing on the beach, and I'll be out there bid calling on the beach, and Goldie will say, "Can we just let this rest for one weekend?" And I try to say, "Okay, I'm gonna let it rest." And then 5 minutes later, I'm practicing again. But there's a lot to it. It's good, been fun, and it's just a lot of practice and a lot of steady work.
How long would you say it took until you finally you thought you really got it down?
You mean the bid calling?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I went to auction school, you know, that's a 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. deal for like 8 days in a row. And when you go to auction school, you learn how to bid call. You know, there's so much more to auction school than that. There's so much rules and regulations, but you learn how. And then if you have that personality, if the bug bites you per se, when you come home, then you put what you learned in on pencil and paper and in your mind, and you gotta work on it. And you know, you can't learn it in a week. You've got to work on it. I'd say, I don't know, a year, at least a year of constant practice and constant running it through my mind to get halfway decent. And I will never reach what I've considered my full capability of bid calling. And I'll tell you why. I listen to it, I record it, and I listen back to it. I hate to hear myself talk on a recording, so I can never satisfy my ears. So I know I'm going to continue to try to get better as time goes on. So it's a continuous work. It's never done.
Never satisfied. I love it. I love it.
Never.
So, you know, you talked about auctioneering being good to you, and you've been successful at it. I'm looking at your resume right here. North Carolina rookie champion, North Carolina state champion, Georgia peach champion. You know, so you've been highly successful. You know what you're doing. And then you also talked about, you know, getting to meet some pretty cool and famous people. Tell us some of the bigger, you know, names and organizations you've done auctions for.
Yeah, one of the first ones I ever done, Caegan, was pretty cool. I won't never forget it. Me and Goldie was sitting on the back porch at Mommy and Papa's one night, and the phone rang. And it was one of the, not an instructor, but he was one of the volunteers that taught the class I did up at Mendenhall, the auction school I went to, which was in High Point, North Carolina. And it was a gentleman by the name of Jimmy Shores. I just called him a couple of weeks ago and thanked him so much for getting me started. But anyway, he was like, "What are you doing on so-and-so?" I was like, "Well, I don't know. Let me look." So I looked around, and back then I didn't have anything going on back then. Nothing. I was just waiting on the phone to ring. So he was like, "Well, I got something you might be interested in." I was like, "All right, what you got?" He said, "How would you like to do one for Richard Petty?" And I was like, "What?" The king.
7-time Winston Cup champion. I mean, the man.
The king, Richard Petty. He said, "How would you like to do Richard Petty's charity golf classic?" I think that's the name of it. I can't remember. But anyway, I was like, "I'd love to." So, man, I went up there, Caegan, done that thing, scared literally to death. The king and Kyle was there. So got a chance to spend a little bit of time with the king. He was so cool. Richard Petty is just a down-to-earth gentleman. He was so cool. I'll never forget what we talked about. We were standing around talking, just me and him, after the event was over and things had cleared out. And we were standing up around this buffet line. They had served food that night, and they had shaved pork up there, or prime rib or something. And he and I were standing there at the same time, and he was reaching down, getting him a piece of pork. And I told him, I said, "Boy, that right there sure would be good one night late about midnight, wouldn't it?" And he looked at me. And he said, "Yeah, maybe have a little bit of mustard in your hand right there." I'll never forget that. But so I got to hang out with Richard Petty, Kyle Petty. Also did Ricky Prohl, who played. I think he played at UNC. Is that right?
Yeah. He's definitely played for the Panthers.
Then he played for the Panthers, and he coached at the Panthers for a while. He's got a really nice place up in Greensboro called Prolific Park. I did his gala a few times, and at that one, a lot of the Panthers would be there. Got a chance to rub elbows with Luke Kuechly, which is a big human being.
Certainly.
I remember Kelvin Benjamin was there. Remember, he was a wide receiver from Florida State. He was huge. I mean, this guy's 6'7", 6'8". I mean, just a big guy. A lot of the players were there. Also went down to UNC Pembroke and done their, they have an athletic department fundraiser once a year, did that for them. There I actually met Chris Corciani. And Brad, I think his name was Brad. Yep, Corch. Yep, half of Fire and Ice. Also met, I think his name is Brad Evans. He's one of the big time NFL referees. Then I went down. Another one that I think that jumps on my mind was Willie Stargell. He was a Major League Baseball player. He had kidney disease. He has a foundation down in Wilmington. Went down there and done that one, and actually got to meet one of my idols from back in the day. Old Spud Webb from NC State was there. Got a chance to meet Spud. He's actually taller than I thought he was, but he's about my height, which is a little bit vertically challenged, but so yeah, man, I've had a chance to rub shoulders with some really cool people in the sports world for sure.
Spud's probably put on a little bit of weight since the mid '80s, right?
Well, he's
probably grown outward a little bit.
He was looking great that night and having a good time.
That's good. So you're put in kind of these high pressure situations. I mean, I know you're a humble dude. You consider yourself just an old country guy, and you're in here with some of these big wigs. I mean, famous people, athletes, wealthy people. I mean, like you said, one of your first ones, you go do an auction for Richard Petty. I mean, what's going through your mind in that situation? I mean, or I know you're nervous because I know you, but I mean, what's going through your mind? Like, what are you telling yourself? What do you say? How do I handle this?
Yeah. Everyone I do, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I'm scared to death every time I do one. One of the first things every time I have an event, when I wake up that morning, it's already there. The palms are already sweating. The butterflies are already flying. When I arrive, man, I try to get there like an hour and a half before pregame per se. Go in and I orient myself with what's going on, make sure I don't have any. Now, we've done a lot of pre-planning and we've had several conversations lead into this thing, but there's nothing like game night and event night, if you will. So then I come in and, I come in. If I have any last minute questions, we talk about it, make sure everybody's on the same page. And then, man, one of the main things I do to try to calm myself down, I always find a quiet place. And when I find that quiet place, I bow my head and I always pray. Oh, Lord, thank you for the opportunity, the talent. Let us have a great night. If it be thy will, and I'll praise your name for it. And after that, I start calming down a little bit. One of the guys at a big contest I was in one time says, we know the butterflies are here. We're going to try to get them flying in the same direction, if you will. So that's how I try to get myself ready. But, there's always a little bit of a shake in the hands and a little bit of a sweat in the palms. But that's what drives me. Daddy, my dad coached, he always told the players, he said, hey, if you ain't sweating in the palms, you ain't ready. So,
yep.
I'm always sweating in the palms, and they always have my undivided attention, because these events I do, as you just hit on, they're very serious events. And it's first and foremost about that foundation. I want them satisfied before I want myself satisfied. So they have my attention, and it's a mental process to make sure you're prepared and ready. It's the same thing every time.
So when you finally get on stage and you're speaking in front of everybody, do you have a spiel? Do you have something that you memorize? Do you have like your introduction that you say every time? How does that work?
It's different for different events. It's according to exactly what our script is like on this particular night. But I normally like to at least introduce myself. A lot of times I am introduced. If I'm not introduced, I introduce myself, and I just make I've wrote down some mental notes on the foundation, and I just tell them, it's an honor to be with you all this evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so happy to be here. We're thankful you're here. The reason the foundation exists is because you're here. And I give myself just a little bit of a 30-second, 1-minute shtick, as you just talked about, just sort of relax myself and just to get everybody on the edge of their seat so we can start that fundraising. Because when I come up, that next 45, 50 minutes is the main fundraising of the evening most of the time.
So I'm kind of going to try to pull it all together here, sort of a big question, but how has auctioneering changed your life? Because I know, you're a passionate guy, you're passionate about a lot of things, but you seem to really be locked in on this one. So how would you say it's changed your life?
I didn't realize these foundations existed. I mean, I didn't realize people raised so much money. I didn't realize there was March of Dimes galas. I didn't realize there was Leukemia Lymphoma Society galas. I didn't realize all these private schools raise money to fund their schools. I didn't realize, there's just the thing about it is it's allowed me to realize how much, in the world we're living in, there's so much good that's going on each and every Friday and Saturday night. There's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of galas across the United States. And I had no clue that was going on. But there's so many good people in the world that want to give back, that want to volunteer, they want to donate money, they want to buy this auction package. They may not even want it, but they want to give $10,000-$20,000 for it just to help the foundation. And it's good, when you turn the news on today, it's good to go to one of these events, because at these events, everything is positive and all the vibes are good and everybody's there. They're dressed nice. They're feeling them. They got their vibes are right. They're just having a great night. And it's a beautiful thing to experience it.
And you get to be a part of that.
I do. I'm very blessed, and thank God I get to be a big part of it, because, my part normally lasts about 45 minutes to an hour. I normally, when I do my consultations, 45 minutes of me is a big plenty, because it's not that's our window of fundraising. We normally have 5, 6, 7 live auction items and then our fund they need. And it is, man, it's an honor and a privilege to be a part of some of the things I've done. I mean, I've seen some beautiful people and some beautiful decors, some things I would have never seen had I not done this. I didn't realize decorations and things like this even existed. I just see some amazing things, and I enjoy the heck out of it.
Yeah, and it sounds like a special thing, and it goes back to the old saying: when you're a part of something special, that makes you special. I think it's Lou Holtz. He has a really good quote. He says, "It doesn't matter if you're successful." He says, "Are you significant?"